one of the founding partners, managing partners in the Bay Area, but I also want to say that there are others like me doing what I'm going to describe, the experiment that's running across American university campuses. If you've ever been to an academic presentation, you can usually tell whether the presentation is going to be funny by how punny the title is. And my title for this was Peering into Peered Futures. So by that standard, I'm doing fine, but this isn't an academic presentation. And so I hope I can describe to you what is a pseudo-experiment in finance. My story starts a couple of years after Dr. Yunus and the Grameen Bank won the Nobel Peace Prize for their work in microfinance, and a teacher gave me this book, Banker to the Poor, in which Dr. Yunus detailed some of the decisions that they had to take to make the Grameen model work. And two of them that were really unique was purposely restricting the amount of money that you could lend out to very small amounts. And the second was actually that peers, so other women, are actually sometimes better decision makers about the validity, the just cause for a loan. And while this sounded great when I was reading this, the novel, I wanted to really understand the ground truth, the first principles. So I went to Bangladesh and spent some time with Dr. Yunus and the villages around Dhaka. And it became very clear why. It turns out a peer, somebody who's actually making their life decisions based on the questions that you are answering. So whether you're a basket weaver or a fisher, if that person has answered that same question and their life has depended on the success of that question 2 or 3 months before you have to answer it, that's actually a better person to make a decision about your situation than, let's say, a loan manager or an actuarial analyst who looks at risk and a bank person. And so it really drove home the point when I was sitting in these loan disbursement meetings of the women lending groups that this model might work really well and does work when you have the need to access credit in a situation where it's actually difficult to do that, and you need very small amounts, but you also have a strong local community. And this is important because if you go to Bangladesh and many emerging countries, one of the things you'll notice is clusters. And the village is probably the tightest social and economic unit of living, which means these clusters often engage in a similar kind of occupation. It's not uncommon to go to a part of the country and have a lot of women in the same country doing the same kind of economic activity, so basket weaving, fishing, which means you have other peers who are doing and taking on the same kind of risk as you are. So it worked really well, but at the time it wasn't clear to me whether this was a generalizable model outside a situation where you're really trying to take very small amounts of money in places like emerging markets and get people to convert that money into several multiples and use that to generate a better standard of living for themselves and the people around them. So I fast forward a couple of years, and it's my sophomore year in college, and my best friend and I and my co-founder at the time decided to build a company, an enterprise software company that was building auctions for different types of data caches. And of course, for a generation of folks, there's a very clear three-step process that Hollywood tells you that it takes to start a great company. You write an equation on a window because apparently you can't find a piece of paper and pen in a dorm room. You then meet with a VC, and you have to be wearing flip-flops, and then you celebrate because everyone's using your product and things are going great. Turns out that's actually not how the world works, especially if you're trying to build, let's say, a sustainable enterprise solution where you're solving a very, very specific problem that people have. People start asking you difficult questions. When will you be dropping out? Reapply after your first customer signs on. So these are snippets that I've taken out of email conversations that I had at the time with venture capitalists. Simple question like, what are the competitors' freemium offerings become a chicken and egg situation? Because often, let's say you're building something that a large company offers. You actually have to fork out several thousands of dollars to be able to try their product, assess it, figure out what they're doing they're not doing that you could do. But if you don't have that kind of capital, where do you start? Most people at universities, and with parents asking you how your grades are doing, it can get pretty tiring, right, to tackle these questions. And venture capitalists are busy people, it turns out, it takes 2 months to schedule a meeting with them. This is a stark contrast to what the world is like for you if you're an engineer, because if you're an engineer, it's actually a really exciting time to build a product. You can basically choose which platform you want to build for. learn how to code, spend a lot of time debugging in a computer, not on a window, and start actually building something people can use. And so as it's become easier for you to build something that people use, it's actually not gotten conversely easier to access money to build a company around that. So it's gotten easier for engineers to build products, but not engineers to build companies, at least while you're a student. And frankly, it became tiring. And my friend and I, this was 8 months in, we'd been trying to figure out how to pull together the ability to go pay for server space, hosting, try our competitors' products out, that we put it to rest when we were approached by a couple of folks who run a fund called First Round Capital in the United States. It's a seed fund, and they had a similar notion where younger and younger founders wanted to talk to people who had gone through the same issues that they were going through, not someone who tried to build a company many, many years ago and didn't really have a sense of the challenges today. So the experiment I'm describing to you today has been running on American university campuses for a little over close to 2 years. It's a $2 million fund with one limited partner, which means just all the capital for the fund was raised from one place, one fund. We hand out $20,000, which is a very small amount of money when you compare that to, let's say, a typical check that's written to folks starting a company out. You have 8 to 10 partners, but these are really just students who have some sense of what you're going through and have been there before or are going through that same process of building something that's useful, that helps the world, that solves a problem around the same time you are, and you have full autonomy now as a peer to actually hand out this really small amount of money that can make or break the existence of a group of folks around a company. But the important part here is that if you generate any returns, we just donate it back to the university and to a university group of our choice. So it's really driven by some latent need or motivation to help others around you as a peer. It's hard to tell, actually, on this slide sometimes for me, who the investors are and who the founders are, because they're all basically dressed the same way. And it's actually not easy because they're often the same. You often have people sitting across both sides of the table building a company while also trying to figure out how to get this money to somebody else who's asking for it. And the question becomes then, does it work? Because what I think theoretically is happening is you're taking the notion that a president is the right person to take the decision about whether you deserve this money to go build your company. A president is somebody I'm defining as who's been there and done it before, but is definitely not a peer of yours. Definitely hasn't answered these questions, hasn't had to wake up at 3 a.m. when the server's having a downtime and had to basically get on a customer support call at that point in time. Who's had to ship, let's say, an Objective-C and Xcode because these things didn't exist 15 years ago. And so peers are now, it turns out, able to make decisions that they weren't. If that's the case, as was in the Grameen Bank, you start wondering, is it really a generalizable model? I mean, it worked in the village situation because you're living together. You are somebody who really needs a very, very, very small amount of money to tackle exactly the same problem. So phishing is generalizably the same, unlike trying to start 2 different companies. So this experiment has been running now. It's exciting to say that after seeing hundreds of students reach out, we've made 61 investments in over 100 founders who all, by the way, haven't dropped out, staying on campus, are able to answer a lot of those questions that I got when I was first starting out. By saying, yeah, we actually do have answers to those questions because somebody wrote us a $20,000 check 30 minutes after we pitched them. So you might ask, what happens to the adults? Like, the adults really trusted you with this? It's important to understand that it's not possible to have peers that make decisions without adults. So Finn and Cece, who is a general partner and a director at First Round, keeps everything running, gets on the phone with us at 2 a.m. to explain what pro rata is, why it's important to invest in a particular way. And then, of course, you have those who have gone before you as resident advisors. This is the analogy borrowed from dorms, where actually they live with you and they've gone through the same thing with you and can help you figure stuff out when you can't. And so the question I'm going to leave you with today is there a place in your company, in your organization, where it's been okay to let a president make a decision when in fact, the peer might be the right person? Thank you.